Hello everyone, thank you for being here. Today's TED Talk will be on locating ableism in our everyday communications and interactions. Before we start, can we please have a raise of hands for who here are aware of the term ableism? That's great, some of the audience know of the term. Now, you may be more familiar with concepts such as sexism, feminism, and racism. Ableism is in the same vein a form of discrimination against people with disabilities. To be more defined, it is the intentional or unintentional act of discrimination or oppression against an individual with a disability. Now, you may be surprised to learn that people with disabilities make up for 15% of the world's population and are therefore one of the world's largest marginalized groups. As a result, many countries have enacted numerous laws and legislations to protect the interests of these minorities. Prominent among these are the American Disabilities Act, the Disabilities Discrimination Act, and Law Number 8 of the 2016 Person with Disability Act in our home country of Indonesia. Yet, despite these numerous laws, people with disabilities still remain heavily discriminated against and socially stigmatized. Now, you may realize by this point in time that ableism is not necessarily a physical form of action. Use of ableist language dominates our everyday communications and interactions without us even realizing its harmful impact. Take, for example, that it's lunchtime and one of your friends comes up to you to talk about a topic you're deeply passionate about. However, their opinion is outrageous and it greatly upsets you. Later on in that evening, you decide to disclose that event with a close friend of yours. What words would you use to describe it? If you used words like insane, lame, or dumb, you have unknowingly, unintentionally participated in the use of ableist language. Did this information surprise you? However, that isn't the only form of ableism in our language, as there also exists microaggressions. Microaggressions can be defined as the intentional or unintentional subtle act of discrimination or prejudice against an individual of a marginalized community. Common forms of microaggressions for people with disabilities include, "You people are so inspiring. I can't believe you're a doctor," or "I can't believe you're a teacher." Do any of these phrases seem like they could be misinterpreted? Because we say some of these phrases sometimes without even realizing what they even mean. Historically, ableism has long been used as a means to contain and control people with disabilities who are deemed to be different or non-contributing members of society. Take, for example, Nazi Germany, who, under Hitler's regime, labeled non-contributing members of society as parasites, and as a result, 200,000 people with disabilities were labeled for extermination. Unfortunately, ableism is largely prevalent in modern society as well, as people with disabilities fight against the ableist mindset and attitude in their everyday lives. Whether it be in education institutions, where they continue to be denied the right to early and higher education, whether it be in the workplace, where employees worry about them being less productive. Even in everyday simple life situations, such as going to a mall with friends, there remains an absence of accessible design, such as the lack of ramps, elevators, and even something as simple as a sidewalk without obstacles. The origin of this ableist discrimination can often be traced back to here, our minds. More specifically, it is how we conceptualize and define normality and productivity. But to change this mindset, we have to first redefine society's understanding of disability. It is at this point in time I'd like to introduce you to the mere difference view. The mere difference view is a view developed by Elizabeth Barnes from the University of Virginia and can essentially be summarized in 4 points. First, disability is not a departure from normal functioning. Second, disability is in the same vein as race and gender. Third, that disability is a part of human diversity and it should be preserved. Fourth, and finally, most of disability's downsides come from society's treatment of people with disabilities themselves. Let's use a thought experiment from Jason Buckley's website to really better understand that last point. Imagine that due to genetic evolution, humanity has developed wings and the ability to fly. There are 2 scenarios within this experiment. In the first scenario, some fly world, there are a majority group of people who cannot fly, and there's a minority group of people who can fly. In the second scenario, most fly world, there are a majority group of people who can fly and a minority group of people who cannot. In both of these scenarios, you're part of the group that cannot fly. What do you think your life would be like in both of these worlds? I'll give you a second to imagine. Are you ready to explore? In the Sunfly world, your life doesn't change drastically, and the world reflects this. The laws, the education, everything in this world is structured to suit the majority, the people who cannot fly. Meanwhile, the minority, the people who can fly, they're regulated with unfair laws such as low altitude limits to make them less problematic. In the most fly world, however, society is now structured to suit the majority, and the changes in your daily life reflects this, as now you can no longer fly to work. You can no longer go to a school in the clouds. You can no longer easily access high-rise apartments, buildings, or floors. Very little of this world's infrastructure is accessible to you, and you have to use a special vehicle like a car because, well, public transport is suited towards those who have wings, not those who don't. In this world, you are consistently reminded every single day that you're one of the few people who do not have wings nor the ability to fly, despite being able to do mostly everything else like them. In this world, you are considered to be disabled. Now, the purpose of this experiment was to show what it's like to be part of a minority and to be different. But just because people with disabilities face these limitations does not mean it stops them. Take, for example, Stephen Hawking. He didn't let his disability stop him from achieving his goals. Due to his contributions, humanity has benefited from numerous and significant countless discoveries. Or what about Muniba Mazari, the national ambassador for UNUN in Pakistan? Although she gained her disabilities later on in her life, she did not let that define her, and instead she forged her own path. Yet, just because these people are well known does not really make them the exception. I have grown up knowing people with disabilities my entire life. My mother is one of them. However, she does not let her disabilities define her, and instead, she makes the most of it. This bystander-like position of mine has in turn allowed me to view this issue both as an insider and an outsider. Ableism is deeply rooted in society, and dismantling it is an overwhelming task. However, that does not mean it needs to be done all at once. Instead, it can be done in small steps, one at a time. More importantly, we can start with small measures on our own end, such as with our language, which forms the core of our thoughts and communications. These small measures adding up will help to form something greater, a movement, which will help us to dismantle the ableist mindset and attitude within our society. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.